I think we're live. Hello, everyone. This is my review of Best Books 2017. They are the books that I read in 2017, not necessarily the ones that were published in 2017. There are a few that are from this year, but I think the majority are from before 2017. So let's get to it. I have a list of top 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are ordered. But 6 through 10, they're not in order. They were close enough. I couldn't figure out where to order them, so it'll just be alphabetical. Let's start. People who are watching this live, please let me know if the sound is okay, if the video is okay, if there are any issues. This is my first time trying to do something like this, so let me know if it's going smoothly. So the numbers 6 through 10 in alphabetical order, beginning with Doom Patrol. This is a relaunch of the title under the Young Animals imprint, which is overseen by Jared Way, the former singer from My Chemical Romance. And I have a page from that comic book, so give me a second. There will be switching back and forth to the Kindle to show the comic books so that you can see them. Here we go. Doom Patrol's loading up right now. There we go. I've got a 2-page spread here. Art by Nick Darrington. Let's see if we can get this recorded. Oops. Oh, that light. All right, and then I have to hold still. Okay, not ideal circumstances. Yaki Eye the Virus. I don't recognize you from your Facebook handle. Okay. So Doom Patrol number 6 had, for me, one of those rare art moments where I was totally involved in the work. Usually there's a part of me that can be removed. Like I know I'm reading a book, I know I'm reading a movie, no matter how much I enjoy it. But there are a few moments where I get completely immersed in the work. Star Wars, when I saw it as a kid, was one of the first times that happened to me. And in Doom Patrol number 6, there's a moment in the story that recalls an issue from Grant Morrison's run 30 years ago. And it was a surprise to be revisiting a story from such a long time before that I was completely spellbound. I wanted to see what Gerard Way would do with that. So that is in between 6 through 10. Next is Killers of the Flower Moon. I listened to this on Audible, so I can't show you the book. I did write down the first line of the book. And for the novels and the nonfiction works, I'm going to try to read the first line to give you an idea of the voice of the writer. And he begins, it's a nonfiction, let me explain what it is. Killers of the Flower Moon, written by David Grann, is a nonfiction work about a series of mysterious murders and deaths of the Osage Indians 100 years ago. And it became one of the first cases the FBI ever tackled. And so this work about some mysterious deaths and killings in an Oklahoma territory, David Grann chose to begin the work by describing the scenery. In April, millions of tiny flowers spread over the Blackjack Hills and the forest prairies of the Osage Territory of Oklahoma. So he chose to begin by giving you a visual sense of the area that you would be spending 200-300 pages going over. I was entranced. As soon as the book began, I didn't want to put it down. It read like a mystery story more than a methodical nonfiction work. So I recommend that to anyone who likes to read mystery or would be interested in the history of the FBI. I was entranced. Next, we have The Sellout by Paul Beatty. It won the Man Booker Prize. I believe it was the first American novel to win the Man Booker Prize, it was traditionally an English prize for the best work of fiction. And they opened it up 2 or 3 years ago for international books. And his became the first, I might be mistaken, but I think it was the first American book to win the award. Oh, that is not good. Look at me. I was frozen. Not good. Anyway, it is a dark social satire about race relations in the U.S. It's not for everyone's taste. It's not plot heavy. It has a plot, but Paul Beatty spends more time in comic riffs and satire than he does in character or plot development. For me, that's great. I have a soft spot for satire, but it's not going to be for everyone. Here's the opening line of the book. This may be hard to believe coming from a black man, but I've never stolen anything. It gives you an idea that the book will be about race relations in the U.S. and exploring stereotypes that we have, racial stereotypes. Let's see, the next work is going to be Slasher by Charles Forsman. Forsman. It is a comic book, a dark social crime, social satire, a dark comedy crime comic book about a young woman with a deep-seated sadism and a need to express her sexual longings through violence. And I have a page from that work here. Let's see, come back here. The art is simple and clean. Not very detailed, but sufficient to express the setting and the emotional tenor of the main character. Let me bring it up here. Oops. Okay, here we go. And in here, the work begins. Oops. There we go. With the main character, the female. She's in a meeting with her manager, and you can kind of see his hand on her shoulder. He has a creepy sexual. He's coming on to her within the setting of business, and while that's happening, she's imagining doing something violent to him, and it intercuts that with her earlier at a supermarket putting her hand into some raw beef. And so it gives you the idea that her longings are violent, and sets up where she may take those violent longings towards. Next, let's see, Wet Moon by Sophie Campbell, which is another comic book. It is about a girl in school, college, university, undergoing her sexual blossoming, finding her racial and sexual identity. It's a little erotic. Here we go. And you can see she's meeting some friends. If I remember right, one of those characters, is her roommate. It's a pretty clean art style. I like the lines, the details, and the way that she uses black and white within each panel. A pretty simple panel layout there too. Right, now we're going to get to the top 5, and this is ordered. I was able to. There was enough distinction between them. I could order them 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's begin with number 5. Number 5 is The Dregs by a pair of writers, Zach Thompson and Lonnie Nadir, and then the artist Eric Zawadzki. It takes place in Vancouver. Let me make sure. I think it's Vancouver. Yeah, Vancouver. And the main character is a homeless detective. And the influences, they listed Rian Johnson's Brick and Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, because they were both genre films that, postmodern genre films that celebrated the tropes of the genre while also undermining them or exploding them. And that's what this work does. Just beginning, the main character, a homeless person, is not usually someone who would be the protagonist of a work of fiction. And it opens with a quote from Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, which gives you an idea that satire and an examination of not just the main character, but society as a whole is going to be integral to the work. Let me show you that opening panel. Oops. There it is, The Dregs. Right. So here we have a scene. Chandler, The Long Goodbye. Let's get this lined up. There we go. You see an open copy of Chandler's The Long Goodbye, a used syringe, and then a hand. We don't know if the person belonging to that hand is dead or just high on drugs. And then you can see a quote there, and that is from Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, which for those who may not be familiar, sorry. Oh yeah, shout out to my brother who gave this to me for my birthday. I'm wearing it for him. For those who don't know, it's from the movie Flash Gordon, the 80s science fiction camp film, Flash Gordon. So back to the Dregs. Oh, Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. Oh, nice. Like them. A Modest Proposal is Jonathan Swift dealing with the Irish potato famine, if I remember right, by saying that the solution to the potato famine would be to kill children and eat the children. And it was written as though it were serious, but it was not serious. It was a satire under the conditions in which England manufactured the famine, leaving all those people dying and malnourished. So it was straight-faced satire. And the Dregs examines the tropes of the noir. Let me give you, oh yeah, here's the opening page. Wait. It examines the tropes of the noir while also exploding them. And it gives the city of Vancouver a central role in the story. So here we see a restaurant, which is central to the plot. Oops. Yeah, you can see the restaurant, many people there in the gentrifying neighborhood, and then the result of the gentrification. You see the homeless person in the very last panel. All right. Fair warning, it does have a downbeat ending. And some people I know don't like it when something ends and it's not optimistic and it's not sad. It's somewhere in the middle. And this has that kind of ending. Okay, number 4, my 4th favorite book or comic book that I read last year was Dark Money by Jane Mayer. It's a nonfiction examination of the billionaires who are using their money to influence American politics, the conservative billionaires who are using their money to influence American politics and are able to do it secretly because laws in the US mean that you can donate to political groups under the guise of charity organizations and not have to reveal that you are spending your money on those causes. The people and the organizations that are tracked in this work are the Koch brothers, the Mercers, the DeVos family, and let me show you the cover of the book. Hold on. So right there. Oops. Books. There we go. Nope, that's not what we want. Let's go back. Oops. All right, let me read the first sentence and then I can show you the cover. On January 20th, 2009, the eyes of the country were on Washington, where over 1 million cheering celebrants crowded the National Mall to witness the inauguration of the first African-American president, Obama. And so she begins her work of nonfiction with the inauguration of the first African-American president in U.S. history, because she finds that that was a pivotal moment in the development of the influence of the right on American politics. They were alarmed by the election of Obama. And let me show you the cover to the work. Just go back there. It's just going to be a small thumbnail of it. Dark Money by Jane Mayer. Yeah, there we go. A journalist who has worked for the New Yorker, among other places, New York Times, among other places, New Yorker and New York Times. Number 3 is Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I'm a fan of Yoko Ogawa. And this is an older work. It was published in Japan in 2003, and then the translation came out later in the US. She's one of the few Japanese authors to have her works translated into English. And she's developed a following here in America. And the basic premise of this is about a professor who suffered a car accident. And as a result of the accident, his memory only lasts for 80 minutes. After 80 minutes, his short-term memory erases and repeats again. It's kind of similar to the movie Memento by Christopher Nolan. And the housekeeper is someone who's hired to take care of the professor. And in the course of the story, the professor befriends her and her son, given the nickname Root. I don't think we ever learned the name of the housekeeper. I don't think we do. I think she's just known as the housekeeper. But the professor gives the son the nickname Root. Oh, some more likes. We like likes. Who joined us? Sumitra. Wow. How are you? Oh, let me give you the opening sentence of the housekeeper and the professor. We called him the professor. That's the opening sentence. I'll give you the second sentence because that one is so short. And he called my son Root because he said the flat top of his head reminded him of the square root sign. So you get an idea of the very dry and precise language. It's not very poetic, but there is meaning behind the meaning behind the characters and the situations that are presented, not in the language itself. Oh, cool. Let's see. Happy New Year's to you. Happy New Year's to everyone. Let me write that in. Oops. Happy New Year's. There we go. Okay, let's move on. So this work is very mysterious, romantic, and in the end, very moving. Apart from the dry language that she's used in her other works, like her collection of short stories, The Diving Pool, this is very engaging, much more mainstream than some of her other writing. And I think the book was a bestseller in the U.S. If not a bestseller, it was a financial success, I think. Number 2 is The Flintstones by writer Mark Russell and artist Steve Poog. And I have a quote from the writer Mark Russell about his intention for the series. Quote, Mark Russell, quote, "I think that one of the fundamental features of civilization is that it tends to reduce people to their economic functions." So the quote earlier that I had for the Dregs from Jonathan Swift, it applies to many of the titles in my top 10. Oh, thank you, Sumitra, for the New Year's wishes. It applies to many of the titles in my top 10. An examination of society and a satirization of the values that we put importance on. For the Flintstones, I can do that with 2 characters that are part of the subplot of the work. But over the course of the 12 issues, the series ended after 12 issues, you would identify and are emotionally moved by these 2 characters, and they are Bowling Ball and Vacuum Cleaner. And if I remember right, I have them here. Give me a second. Some more likes. Thank you. Oh, hello. Hello, An. All right. I have pictures of Bowling Ball and Vacuum Cleaner. They are just prehistoric animals. If you've seen the cartoon, you know that they use prehistoric animals for lights and record players. It's part of one of the running gags in the series. All right. And Mark Russell takes that idea and then expands it and makes a subplot out to these characters. And here we are. Here's the aardvark kind of guy is Bowling Ball. Oops. And the elephant is Vacuum Cleaner. And over the course of 12 issues, you learn about these 2 characters, and eventually you're quite moved by what happens to them. Over the course of the 12 issues, Mark Russell examines the institutions of marriage, government, war, science, religion. They worship a made-up god, Gerald, but Gerald is just a stand-in for our Christian God, or Yahweh. Thank you for the likes, guys. So it turns moving and also very funny. Flintstones, yeah, number 2 on my list. So out of everything I read last year, I felt strongly enough about the Flintstones to put it at number 2. And then my favorite book from last year was recommended to me by one of my friends, Sonia. It was on the long list for the National Book Award. Didn't win, but it shares a characteristic that many of the works that I chose for my top 10 this year had, which is that it had characters that were on the fringes or the outside of society, that society overlooks or looks down upon. This work is Pachinko by the American writer Min Jin Lee, and it's set over the course of decades, and it covers it's a wide-ranging historical novel. It covers 3 generations of a family, beginning in Korea around the time of the Depression, 1920s, 1930s, and then moving on all the way up to the bubble economy of Japan in the 1980s. So a course of 60 years. And let's get the opening line for Pachinko. Oops. While I do that, let me give you the idea of the influences that the writer Min Jin Lee had. Her influences are Charlotte Bronte, Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, the Japanese writer Tanizaki, Japanese writer Murakami, James Baldwin, and I sensed a little bit of Margaret Mitchell, Gone with the Wind, as an influence on the book. Hold on, let me get Pachinko right there. All right, the opening line for Pachinko. History has failed us, but no matter. And you get the idea that the novel will cover some of the great moments in the history of the 20th century, World War II, one of them. But it's going to be more about the people who are trying to make their way as history pushes them around like Pachinko balls. The title of the novel is both symbolic and literal. Some of the characters make their living in the Pachinko world because that's one of the few. The characters they're Korean, living in Japan, and some of them live as Japanese under the stigma of being Korean. One of the few areas that Koreans living in Japan can make any money is Pachinko parlors because it's looked down upon. So Japanese don't want to take that work, leaving it to the Koreans living there. Idea of the plot: there is a young girl who falls for a fishmonger, quote unquote fishmonger, but really Yakuza, and during a summertime fling becomes pregnant with his child. She learns that he is already married and he wants to keep her as a second wife, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with that. So she breaks off all contact with him. Over the course of the decades, they don't stay apart from each other, and we follow the result of that, the son that comes from that summertime affair, and the son that she has later with a legitimate husband. We follow the families, their children, the 3 generations through six decades. So sad. There were moments in the novel where I was crying. Exciting, interesting. It's in the tradition of 19th century novel where you're wrapped up within the world. And one thing that the author, it's Min Jin Lee, demonstrates is a capacity for empathy for her characters. Very significant moment. The Yakuza figure who is presented not menacingly throughout most of it. There's one sequence where the writer reminds us he is Yakuza and he can kill people or ruin their lives with a whim. And he does that to one character. And so I think the reason the author did that was to show that his feeling for the main character, Sunja, is so deep that he would never harm her, but he does have the capacity for violence. So when he does commit this act of violence against an important character, the author then spends another paragraph telling us what happens to that character. And it's sad. And the author didn't need to do that. But for all the dozens of characters that appear in the novel, the author wants us to have feeling for them, to even when they're doing something bad, to have an idea of why they're doing those bad things. It's usually just because they're trying to survive. And that was my favorite book from the year, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Let me show you the cover of that book right here. There's a thumbnail of the cover. Get up there. And then next to that, I think I forgot to show a thumbnail for the cover of the Housekeeper and the Professor. And that was my top 10 for 2017. Anyone who's watching, if you I would love to hear what your favorite books were for past year. It could be new books from 2017 or just something you read for the first time. Please share those in the comments. And happy 2018 for all those who watched. And that's it for now. Goodbye. Take care.